All right, so we're going to do a full walkthrough of the October 2022 calculator section, all of the math questions here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and timestamp this so this can make it more effective and efficient for you guys to be able to better make use of this video to help you prepare for the SAT. All that I ask is please drop a like, subscribe, drop a comment, and even if it's just a simple thanks, helps this video spread around and help more people out on the SAT here. But let's jump straight into the first question. So here we're looking for f of 8. Well, pretty simply, we're plugging 8 in here, and then we're just going to solve for 13. So I'm just going to do 17 times 8 plus 13. That's going to be my correct answer here of D. Question number 2, so this is an inequality here. So we're looking for which one is the solution. Well, all I'm looking for is any point that's going to be in this shaded region. So I would just start by checking A, but 5, 0 is going to be in the shaded region. So I can pick A and I can move on. Question 3, Leonardo da Vinci's rectangular painting Mona Lisa measures 21 by 30. An artist is creating a larger scale replica of the Mona Lisa where the equation A equals 21x by 30x gives the area of the replica in square inches. We're looking for the interpretation of the x. This is not going to be how many inches greater that it is. This is really just telling us how we're kind of scaling it up because we're multiplying that 21 by x and that 30 by x. So this is really telling us the measure of each side of the replica is x times is great is the original corresponding side. All right, now question 4, we're looking for the measure of value y. This is actually your exterior angle theorem. It's just going to equal the sum of these two other angles, which is the same as 90 plus 40, which is going to give us our correct answer here of 130. You could absolutely solve for x and then subtract away 180. Either way, you're going to get to the right answer. All right, question 5. Dakota and Alex work as babysitters. For each babysitting job, Dakota charges $10 per hour plus a flat fee of $5 for travel expenses. Alex charges $8 per hour plus an additional fee of $4 per child. Dakota and Alex have different babysitting jobs where each will be babysitting 4 children for the same amount of time. If they charge the same amount in dollars, how many hours will each spend babysitting? Well, we're just going to have to pull out some equations here. So we know Dakota charges $10 per hour plus an initial flat fee of $5. Now Alex is $8 per hour plus it's $4 per child and he's babysitting 4 children. So we're going to simply get these two equations. So we'll get that 10x plus 5 equals 8x plus 16. Now I'm going to subtract over the 8x. I'm going to subtract over the 5. And I'll get that 2x equals 11. Therefore, x is going to equal 5.5. All right, on to question 6 here. So we're given that same information about Dakota and Alex, but now we're looking for which graph shows the relationship between the time in hours that Dakota spends babysitting and the amount that she charges for it. Well, I know this is going to be my y-intercept. Anytime you see a flat fee or an initial fee, that's a y-intercept. So it's going to have to start at 5. So this is going to help me eliminate A and D here. And then from there, I know I have a slope of 10. Every additional hour, I'm increasing by 10. So the easiest thing I could do is I know after 1 hour, she's going to have to have charged $15. So at 1, C is at 20, so that's wrong. But B is at 15. That gives me the easiest way of finding my right answer there. All right, question 7. Line L has a slope of -3 and an x-intercept of 9/2. What is the y-intercept? Well, you can absolutely also use point slope form, but this is the way that I really like to teach this in my course because it's way easier for most students. We know that the standard equation is y equals mx plus b. So I'm just going to use a capital B because otherwise it looks like a 6 sometimes. But we can solve for b if we have any point. So we have the point 9/2, 0. So I can plug in 0 for y, and I can do -3 times 9/2 plus, and I'll put this back down to our b here. Now we're going to subtract over the b, and we'll get -b equals -27/2. Therefore, b, which is going to be our y-intercept, is going to equal 27/2. So we always have a y-intercept when x equals 0, so that's really easy to eliminate A and C, but we know our y value we just solved for is 27/2, so that's how we can tell that D is our correct answer there. All right, the table shows the approximate land areas in thousands of acres of 4 national parks in West Virginia. What is the range? Well, that's just going to be my biggest minus my smallest. So 72.2 minus 4.3. This is going to have to give us, C is going to have to be our correct answer here. 72.2, 68. Yep, yeah. Having a little mental math moment there. Question number 9 here. A new data set with 3 values is formed by removing the data for the New River Gorge National River. How does the mean area for the new data set compare to the original? Well, we've removed by far our biggest value, so that's going to tell us that the mean is going to have to drop. So the mean area of the new data set is going to have to be smaller than our original one because we took away the biggest one. Question 10. The mass y in grams of juvenile cobia fish X days after hatching can be modeled by the equation y equals negative 324 plus 5.6x, where, all right, this is going to be our little twist, x has to be less than or equal to 60 or less than or equal to 20 to 100. Which graph represents this relationship? Well, easiest thing here, one thing I can see is this is going to be a positive slope. So that's going to be a super easy way of getting rid of C and D. Now the other ones is where oftentimes students might get a little tripped up, but the easiest thing we can do here is we can solve for the first point we should see on the graph, and that's going to be where x has to be less than or equal to 60. So if we plug 60 in for x here, and we'll just kind of do it without approximating to be extra safe, but 5.6 times 60 is going to equal 336 minus the 324. That means our y value, we're going to have the point when x equals 60, y is going to have to equal 12, right? Which is just another way we can say we have to see the point 60, 12 on the graph. Well, from here, the only one that could possibly be doing that is A, so that's how we can find our right answer there. All right, question 11. Scatter plot shows those variables. For how many of the data points does the scatter plot predict a y value greater than the actual? Well, the dots you see are your actual, the line is your predicted. So I'm simply counting 1, 2, 3, and then 4. Those are all of the ones that are below the line of best fit. Question 12, line K is defined by this equation. Line J is perpendicular. This is the second one of these questions we've seen on this test. The first one was parallel. Perpendicular is the negative reciprocal. Flip the fraction, flip the sign. So it's going to equal negative 1/2. All right. In 2015, a certain country had a population of 250 million people, of which, all right, this is going to be like a 2-part question, it looks like. The adult population of this country in 2015 was 77% of the total population. Which of the following was the approximate total population of this country in 2015? This is a percentage question. The SAT absolutely loves these. So here what we can really simply do is we can say 0.77x is equal to 250. We're saying 77% of the entire population, or x, is equal to 250. So here we're just doing 250 divided by 0.77. That's going to give us 324. And they love to do this where they say approximate. C is the only one remotely close to that, so I can pick that and move on. All right, in 2015, what fraction of the adult internet users in this country had access to 2 or more social media websites? So the whole population that I'm going to get to use is the internet users. So that means my denominator is going to be 160. And 52.8 had access to 2 or more social media websites. So this is basically the same as like 53 over 160 here. So we'll go ahead and I'm read back through to make sure I didn't make a mistake. Adult internet users had, yep, okay, cool. All right, so that is going to simplify down to basically 0.33, which is also the same as 33 over 100. All right, what is the value of x plus 9? Well, anytime we're solving for expressions like this on the test, there's often a really short way we could do it. We have 10x plus 9 over here, and I see 9x plus 9 over here. So all I really can pretty simply do here is I can just go ahead and divide by 9x plus 9 on both sides of the equation, and that's going to simplify down to x plus 9 simply equals 25. You absolutely would be totally fine to solve for x and then go back through, but with these, if you solve for x, we're going to get 16. always put a big fat circle around questions like this if you're not going to take the shortcut way, so that you don't forget it and you end up missing a question that you easily knew how to do. 16 here. A biologist selected a sample of adult female cardinal blue butterflies at random from a local population. The mean forewing length of the butterflies in the sample is 1.5 centimeters. The margin of error associated with this sample is 1 centimeter. If the biologist wants an estimate that has a smaller margin of error with it and can be generalized to the entire local population, which of the following changes should be made when the study is repeated? Well, margin of error is always, this is just like a really specific thing you have to know. We cover this in kind of our statistics part. But margin of error is going to decrease as population size increases, because as you sample a greater and greater percent of the total population, you should be becoming more and more accurate. Therefore, your margin of error, the range of which you have to kind of add and subtract because you're not super completely confident about where the value is going to fall, is going to shrink down. So all you really need to know with this is if we take a bigger sample, our margin of error is going to decrease. If you had a smaller sample size, because now you've picked fewer percent of the total population, your margin of error is going to increase. 17, the ratio of the diameter of a circle is 1 to pi. If the diameter of the circle is multiplied by 3, how will the circumference change? Well, we know circumference can also be written as like pi d. So if we multiplied by the diameter by 3, we're also going to be multiplying the circumference by 3 as well. They're going to be directly related. What is the perimeter of this figure? All right, this looks like a little bit of a puzzle question here. So looks like I'm going to need to solve for this side length. And okay, so what I'm kind of looking at here is this entire top to bottom of the figure is going to be 11. So that's going to tell me that I'll go ahead and I'll start kind of eliminating some side lengths. So I know 2 plus 9, I'm going to already have taken care of those, so those are going to be 11. What I also know is this length plus this length plus this length plus this length is also going to add up to 11. So I've already taken care of all of those. Now, the other parts I can really easily take care of. This is 5 and this is 7. So I'm going to add my 5 and I'm going to add my 7. Now, since this is 2.5, this is also 2.5. So I'm going to have 3 2.5s, so plus 7.5. And now the last part is we have to solve for this. So what we kind of know here, though, is since this is 2.5 and this entire bit is 5, that means this is 2.5, the same way that this would also be 2.5. And I hope that's making perfect sense. Therefore, right, we already took away the 7, but that means this side length is going to be the same as 7 minus 2.5, which is going to add another 4.5. So now when we add all these together, as long as I haven't made a mistake, we should get a correct answer here. And as long as I don't make a calculator error, yep, that will give us 46. That should be our right answer there. 19 here, which statement best compares the mean A and standard deviation B of dataset P with the mean C and standard deviation D of dataset Q? Well, anytime I'm dealing with standard deviation, I'm always looking at like the spread of the values across the dataset. So there's two things I also look for. Range, because range can help make it easier for you to identify standard deviation. So the first thing I notice here is both of these data sets have a range of 9. And so now that I can see these frequencies are evenly distributed between the two data sets, the frequencies are showing up in the exact same spots, that means my standard deviation is going to be the same, because that means the values are going to be spread out the exact same way in the two data sets. So that's going to tell me that B and D are going to have to be equivalent. So I can get rid of A and I can get rid of D. Now the other thing I notice here, though, is all of the values in this data set are bigger than the corresponding values in data set B. That means that the mean of data set Q is going to have to be greater than the mean of data set A, and that's how I can see that B is going to be my correct answer there. All right, question 20 here. All right, line T is tangent to this circle at the point 4, -3. Which of the following points also lies on line T? All right, so what we just kind of have to know with this, and this was a question one of my students kind of missed, so I had a line there already. But what I know with this is any point that is tangent to a circle, this is really specific knowledge, is going to be perpendicular to the slope of the center to any point on the edge of the circle. So pretty fancy way of basically just saying if we take a point which gives us from the center to the point that it's tangent with, this is going to be perpendicular in slope to that as we're going through. I think I said that in a little bit of a confusing way, so we'll go back over. So the slope of -1, 1 to 4, -3 is going to be perpendicular to the slope of this line t. That's a way easier way of saying it there. So the first thing I'm going to want to do, though, is I'm going to want to take the slope of these 2 points, because then if I find the perpendicular, I can really start working towards my answer. So we will do -3 minus 1 over 4 minus -1. This is going to give us -4 over 5. So that means the slope of line t is going to equal 5/4. So now what we know is one point here is we have the point 4, -3. So I could absolutely solve through for the whole y equals mx plus b equation, but each of these values looks like they're going to be pretty close to it. So instead what I would do is I would just start going up and over 5 and 4, and I'll get to see if one of my answer choices works. If not, I could go back through and solve for the entire equation of the line, and then I could start checking each of my answer choices. But from 4, if we 4, -3, if we go up 5, our new y value is going to equal 2, and if we go over 4, our x value is going to equal 8. So the point 8, 2 also is going to be on the line. Therefore, C is going to be correct there. All right, question 21. The solution to the given system of equations is x, y. What is the value of y? All right, I bet a lot of students miss this question because they solve for x, not y. So once again, if you're ever solving for something that isn't like the classic x, put a big fat circle so you don't forget as you come back to it. But first thing here is I'm going to have to solve for the x point of intersection. Then I'm simply going to have to go back through and solve for the y point. So I will add over my 3x, I'll subtract over my 6. This is going to give me that 3 equals 6x. Therefore, my x value is 0.5. So tons of students probably pick D incorrectly. All I have to do is take my 0.5. I can plug it back in for either of these answer choices as x. Either way I can see I'm going to get the answer of 7.5. All right. 22, a researcher estimates that there's a population of 618 gray wolves in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which covers an area of 16,452 square miles. Which of the following is closest to the estimated population density in gray wolves per square mile? Well, one thing, and I'm immediately noticing this with the answer choices, is I have way less gray wolves than square miles. So I'm going to have less than 1 gray wolf per square mile. So it's going to have to be A is my correct answer, but you could simply solve for this by doing 618 divided by 16,452. All right. In the xy plane, exactly how many x-intercepts does the graph of f of x equals x times x minus 4 squared times x minus 5 cubed have? Well, this is not adding intercepts. This is just talking about like the multiplicity, the behavior at the intercepts. So pretty simply, we're going to have an intercept of 0, of +4, and +5. We don't even need to solve for that part, though. It's just going to give us 3 intercepts here. If you have a graphing calculator, you absolutely could graph this as well, but this is a concept you really want to make sure you're comfortable with your quadratics, and the SAT loves these because you can get questions like this on the no-calc section as well. All right, 24. The effectiveness of a mineral supplement in the soil on the growth of a particular species of plant is being studied. A botanist planted 1,000 seeds in a greenhouse so that the growing conditions for all seeds would be as identical as possible. The seeds were obtained from 2 500 seed packages. The seed from one package were planted in the soil that had the supplement added, and the seeds from the second package were planted in soil that did not have the supplement added. How should the experiment be changed to allow the researcher to conclude whether the supplement has an effect on plant growth? Well, the issue here is we have 2 variables in this experiment. We have the supplements being supplied to some of the soil and not the other soil, but we also have seeds from 2 different packages. So it's going to be hard for us currently to understand whether the seeds from the different packages are contributing to the different amounts of plant growth or the supplement in the soil. Now, the way that we could fix this is we could control for that variable by splitting up the seeds from each package into the two different growth conditions of the supplement. So we're going to have to, yes, randomly assign half of the seeds from each package, because then we're going to have the seeds from basically like package A and package B in one soil and package A and package B in the other soil. Then we can compare, and that's going to tell us if the supplement was having the effect or if it's the packages that the seeds came in were having the effect. This is really just a statistics question and also about kind of understanding experiments and controlling for variables. 25 here. Oh, this probably tripped a lot of people up. Researchers estimated that 0.07% by mass, so percentages, once again, the SAT loves these, of a 12-gram sample of an orchid plant consists of the phytic acid. I'm going to skip pronouncing that. Based on this estimate, what is the mass of that acid in grams of the orchid sample? Well, when you get percentage questions like this, it's really easy to get turned around. But there's a few super easy percentages you can remember that always give you a benchmark. So 50% is the same as 0.5. 5% is the same as 0.05. That would tell us that 0.5% would be the same as 0.005. And that means that 0.05% would be the same as 0.0005. And this, just kind of using this as we work through if we ever get turned around for percentages, can really help us out, because now we know that 0.07% is just going to be 0.007. So we're simply multiplying that by 12. And I'm not going to trust my mental math for this one. That will give us A as our correct answer, but really easy to get turned around. Percentages are super important to make sure we're comfortable with. The population in millions of Suzhou, China, hopefully I'm not butchering that, can be modeled by the function P of t equals 1.1 times 1.066 to the t, where t represents the number of years after 1990, and it has to be less than 25 years after 1990. Which of the following equations best models the population in millions of Suzhou, where n represents the number of years after 1995? All right, so this is an exponential growth and decay question, and definitely a little bit of a tricky one here. Now, what I can kind of do with this, and what I would most commonly do for a question like this to make it as easy as possible to solve, is pick some values. So I could plug in 6 here, and then, because I'm now looking for number of years after 1995, I could plug 1 in for n in each of these answer choices, and I can just play a matching game to see which one is the same. We know the equations have to be giving the same output. Now we've just adjusted for after 1995. So this can give you a really easy way you can work through these questions. Now, conceptually, what I'm looking for and how I can tell that C is going to have to be my right answer is we're going to still be starting at the same 1.1. We're not going to be showing any amount of increase or decrease because with that portion, because if we plug 5 in here, we're simply going to do 1.1 times 1.066 to the fifth power. So that's going to take care of that part. Now, every additional year, we're just going to be multiplying by 1.066. Again, this is how exponential growth and decay works. You keep multiplying by the same multiple or percent increase or decrease, and it just keeps increasing by that same rate every year, but it's going to be a different amount as you go through. So that's how I can see that C is correct here. This part would get me to 1995. This part would start increasing for every year after. This is going to be adding in too much by doing that first portion there. But as I said, plugging values in gives you a really easy way you can approach this. All right, question 27 here. In the given equation, C is a constant. The equation has two distinct real solutions, so this is going to be a discriminant question. Which statement about the value of C must be true? So that means b squared minus 4ac must be greater than 0 for us to have two distinct real solutions. So we're just going to plug this in. We'll get 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times c has to be greater than 0 here. So this is going to give us 36. That's a pretty bad 3 there. Go ahead and write that. 36 minus 4c is greater than 0. So I will get negative 4c is greater than negative 36. I'm going to divide by negative 4. I'm going to get that c has to be less than 9. That's going to give us d there. 28, a procedure allows a researcher to determine the concentration of glucose Y in micrograms per milliliter in a soil sample by measuring the absorbance X at a specific wavelength of light. The scatter plot shows this relationship for 5 soil samples. So if I'm looking for like the most appropriate model, a little bit easier here on an iPad, but I'm basically just looking for a line that's running pretty much straight through as many of these points as possible here. But what I can really see is, first thing I can knock off is this is going to be way too high of a y-intercept of 90, and same thing with C. That's going to be far too high of a intercept. But then all I really want to do is just plug in X values. And I'd say like one point that I can be relatively confident is I'm going to have a point pretty close to 0.5, 50. Even if we're pretty far off, we're going to see only one answer choice will work. So I'm just going to plug in 0.5 for X and see which one of these is close to 50. B would basically give us 6.5. That's not going to be remotely close. But A would give us like 46.5. That's the only one that's remotely close. That's why A is our right answer. Always be really careful about how the X and Y axes are scaled differently on the SAT. All right, a piece of paper is cut 2 times, resulting in 3 smaller pieces of paper of the same shape and size. Then the 3 smaller pieces are stacked and cut 2 times to form 9 smaller pieces, each with the same shape and size. This process continues until the pieces of paper are too small to cut. Which of the following functions gives the number of pieces of paper f of C that results after C cuts, where C is an even number? Well, I have 2 really easy points here I can check. I know if I do 2 cuts, I should have 4 pieces. And if I do 4 cuts, I should do 9 pieces. So that's the first thing I'm just going to do here is I'm just going to start by plugging 2 in for C in each of these. That's going to let me kind of fact check this. Well, we'll start with D. 3 times 2 to the second would give us 4 to the fifth. 3 to the fifth is going to be way, way bigger than 3. So that would get rid of that. This will give us 3 to the fourth with C when we plug it in. Once again, way too big. B, 3 to the 2 over 2. So that's going to be 1 plus 1. This would work for 9. This would work for... nope, that actually wouldn't work because that would give us 9. That would give us 3 squared would equal 9. That's not going to work. So only A is going to work. We don't even have to check our second point. But if we wanted to, we could do 3 to the 4 over 2 equals 3 squared. When we plug 4 in, we do get 9. When we plug 2 in, we get 3. Super simplistic way of getting these right every single time, rather than trying to conceptually work through them. All right, question 30. There's 640 acres in 1 square mile. The area of forest is increasing at a rate of 1 acre per decade. Which of the following is closest to the rate at which the area of the forest is increasing in square kilometers per decade? Oh, this is a fun question here. So what we know is we have like 640 acres in 1, we'll say mile squared, 1 square mile. So we have to get this to kilometers squared. But what we know is 1 kilometer here is going to be equal to, got it, all right. So we need to cancel out our miles. So we could do 0.62 miles. That's a pretty bad M. In 1 kilometer, this is going to help us cancel it out. This is something I really cover in depth, the unit conversion part of our course here. But I'm going to square all of this because I'm looking for square miles. There's 640 acres in 1 square mile, so I need to get it into square kilometers, so I need to square this. So before we multiply through, I'll just go ahead and do this. So 0.62 to the second is going to equal 0.384. So what we're going to get is 640 acres over 1 mile squared times 0.3844 miles, if my stylus cooperates, over 1 kilometer squared. So this is going to give us the square kilometers of the total area. So we'll do 640 times 0.3844. That's going to give us that our total area of the forest is going to be 246.016 acres in our square kilometers here. So now if I'm looking at it's increasing at a rate of 1 acre per decade, all I pretty simply have to do here is I'm now just doing 1 divided by the 0.016, because that's going to be my rate of increase. We currently are at 246.016. This is how much we're increasing by every decade. So 1 divided by the 246.016 is going to give us 0.0406. So that's going to give us our correct answer there of D. Pretty tricky question though. All right, 31. This is an observer counted the number of paddle boats on a lake each hour beginning at 8 a.m. How many were there at 2? Well, at 2, I'm just going to go up here. That's going to intersect at 7. So nothing super tricky there. A company spent a total of $9,000 on digital and print ads. The ratio of the money spent on digital to the money spent on print was 1 to 3. How much money in dollars did this company spend on digital ads? This has probably tripped up a lot of people. This is what I kind of teach as a ratio and a total question. So there's 2 ways you could do this. You could do 1x plus 3x equals 9,000 and go through and solve for x. And then since we're looking for the digital portion, we'd plug back in for the 1. Or the way that I prefer to do this is I would say 1 over 4 equals x over 9,000. Now the reason I'm getting the 4 and not doing the 3 is the ratio of my pieces is 1 to 3, but that means the ratio of them in total, there's going to be 4 pieces in total. That is made up by our 1 plus 3 of our individual ratio pieces. But from here, we're going to cross multiply and we're going to solve through. This is something I have an entire kind of group of questions around in our ratio course here. 33. All right, so it's going to be a quadratic factoring question. We're seeing the solution is root k minus 1. This means I'm going to have to use the quadratic formula to solve. This is a really classic SAT question once again. So I will do negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So this is going to give me negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 8. Always watch out for those double negatives. All over 2. This is going to simplify down using my root tree into negative 2 plus or minus 2 root 2 all over 2. Now I can cancel out those 2's. So then I will get negative 1 plus or minus root 2. And now to make it a little more annoying, they just reverse the order. And right, all of this would be x equals. So that would give us that x equals the same as root 2 minus 1 or negative 1 plus root 2. That means our k value is going to be the root. That means k is going to equal 2 there. 34. The function c gives the temperature in degrees Celsius that corresponds to a temperature of x degrees Fahrenheit. If a temperature increased by 19.8 degrees Fahrenheit, how much did the temperature increase in degrees Celsius? All right. So the easiest way that I would like to work through a question like this is just by picking 2 points. Pick an initial point, find the value, pick a new point, add 19.8 to it. So the easiest way I could do this is, let's say to start with, our first value is going to be 32. The reason I'm doing this is because when I do 32 minus 32, I'm going to zero it out. So that means when the Fahrenheit is 32, my Celsius is going to be 0. Well, now all I have to do is I'm going to do 32 plus 19.8. So that means my next point is going to be 51.8. And so now all I'm going to do is 51.8 minus the 32 gives me the 19.8. And now I'm going to multiply that by 5 over 9. And no, I think I made a calculator error here. If the temperature's increased, yep, I definitely made a calculator error. So give me half a second here. So we'll do 5/9, and then we're going to multiply that. I forgot to do that. Or multiply that by our other value, and then we will get 11 as we're going through. So that's going to give us our correct answer here. Once I plug the 51.8 in for x, which I was struggling with, and I see that my Celsius is 11, this was my first point. This was my point after I increased by 19.8. Therefore, when I increase by 19.8, I'm going to be increasing by 11, and that's going to give me the right answer. 35. The figure shows 2 rectangles. If a point within the figure is selected at random, what is the probability that the point is within the shaded region? All right, well, what we know is the entire region, the denominator is going to be 35. That's going to be our 5 times 7. But if we're looking for the shaded region, that's going to be the same as our 5 times 7 minus the 3 times 5. So this is going to be the same as 20 over 35, which we can reduce down to 4 over 7, and that will give us our correct answer there. Same thing with these. Be really careful. I bet quite a few students ended up picking like 15 over 35 and reduced it down to 3 over 7. Always be really careful what you're answering for on the SAT. All right, in the given equation, Q is a constant. The equation has no solution. What is the value of Q? Well, the easiest way that I like to kind of teach these is I like to put it back so they're kind of two lines set equal to each other. So I'm going to add the 9x. So I would do 24, and I'll write the Q like that, otherwise it's going to look like a 6 with my handwriting, equals 9x plus 36. Now, the reason I like to kind of look at them like this, and this is how I really kind of teach to deal with a lot of these constant questions, is if we have no solutions, we have lines, and they're going to be parallel, but they're going to have a different intercept. Well, this portion is already taking care of the intercept portion. That means this slope and this slope, if they have no solution, 24qx must be equal to 9x, because this is really also the same as like 24qx plus 0 equals 9x plus 36. So they have different y-intercepts. If we want them to have no solutions, the slopes must be equivalent to each other. So we can solve for q by simply doing 24qx equals 9x. So now we're just going to divide by 24x. We'll get that q equals 9 over 24, which we can reduce down to 3 over 8, and that will give us our right answer. Understanding no solution, one solution, two solutions, infinite solutions is really, really important on the SAT, and the questions are often far easier once you just know what you're looking for and how to approach them. All right, 37 here. So another percentage question here. The value of r is 20 over 21 times the value of t. So that means r equals 20 over 21t. The value of t is what percent greater than r? Well, we could really just redo this then by saying we can multiply by the reciprocal, and we could say that 20 over 21 times r is equal to t. Now I'd want to basically go ahead and I multiplied by the reciprocal wrong there. 21 over 20, that's going to be our reciprocal, times r is going to equal to t. Now in terms of percentages, the way I always try to teach these is 1 plus or minus the percent expressed as a decimal, because it's way easier for students to work through. So 21 over 20 is the same as 1.05 r equals t. Now when we think about this as 1 plus or minus, let's say I saw 1.6, that would be showing me a 60% increase. So in this instance, when I see 1.05, that's going to give me a 5% increase, and that's why our correct answer here is going to be 5. All right, now to number 38. I think this is the question that was supposed to be the killer from the test. So this is the first time I'm looking at this, so we'll see how quickly I can figure this out. Two numbers a and b are each greater than 0. And 4 times the square root of a is equal to 9 times the cube root of b. If a equals 2 over 3, what is the value of x? What value of x is a to the x equal to b? Well, yes, the good one here. So we'll start by kind of writing all this stuff out here. So what we know is 4 times the square root of a, or I could write this as a to the 1/2, is equal to 9 times the cube root of b. So I'm going to want to start isolating for b here. And I think I'm seeing the pattern here of the 4 over 9 and the 2 over 3 that I think is going to come into play. But we'll see that in a second. So here I'm going to go ahead and divide by 9. So what I will get is 4 over 9 times root a is equal to the cube root of b. And there's always little patterns that are happening with these really hard SAT questions that lets you solve them way easier. So now we know that a equals 2/3. So what I could have here is 4 over 9 times 2/3 is equal to the cube root of b. And the pattern that I kind of spotted is, well, 4 over 9 is the exact same thing as 2/3 squared. And this is going to let me start using some of my exponent rules. So that's why I was kind of looking at this pattern. I was looking at this, looking at how it could relate to the numbers I see in the question, and that often is going to start kicking me in the right direction, because I know I'm going to want to use my exponent rules, so I'm going to want to create the same bases. That's kind of how I'm able to pick up that pattern there. So now I can rewrite this as 2 over 3 squared times 2 over 3 is equal to, times the square root of 2 over 3, otherwise I'm about to have a big problem here, is equal to the cube root of b. Now, this is the same as 2 over 3 squared times 2 over 3, otherwise I definitely would have got the wrong answer if I didn't catch that, equals the cube root of b. And so now what I will get is this is the same as 2 over 3 to the 5 halves equals the cube root of b. So now I'm going to raise everything to the third power, both sides of this. And so that is going to be the same as 2 over 3 to the 15 over 2. When we're multiplying these, it's the same as by multiplying by 3 over 1 is going to equal b. So that means our correct answer here is going to be 15 over 2. But this is a really hard question. You could also solve this with logs as well if you have a calculator and you're comfortable with logs. But this is actually something that I would more so focus on trying to understand the exponent portion if you're really looking for like that 800, that super high 700, because stuff like this is fair game to show up in the non-calculator section as well. But I really hope this video has helped you out. This definitely is a bit of a killer question here. I'll have to check the curve to see if you're able to miss this and still get an 800. This is a really hard question, but I really hope this video has helped you out. If it helped you out with any of these questions or 38 here, please like, drop a thank you in the comments, subscribe. I'm always trying to drop more helpful SAT content to help you guys out. Additionally, those little values you saw in the top corner for each of the questions correspond to the chapter in our math book and the portion in our SAT course that teaches those same concepts. So there's a 10-day free trial for that. Really gives you the exact same experience as being tutored by me, but for a fraction of the budget instead of $3,500 to $5,000. So I would definitely recommend checking that out, at least working through some of the content with the free trial. But it's going to give you a really nice structured curriculum, which has really been successful over the years for me, for all of the high achieving students I really specialize with.